He ruined my sister's only birth experience, so I made sure he'd never forget her. Obligatory apology for formatting as I am on mobile. Kinda my revenge. Kinda my sister's. Both of us really proud. This is gonna be long, so too long, didn't he read at bottom? Here's her cast. My sister, will call her Sarah for the story. Sister's ex-BF Paul. Ex-BF's new wife Jane. Ex-BF's parents Mr. and MRS. Doe. Oldest brother Zeke. Our parents. And me. When I was 14 and my oldest sister, Sarah, was 22, we found out that she was pregnant with Paul, her boyfriend of 4 years. They immediately got engaged and they were really happy. For a time. Sarah had a horrible pregnancy. About 16-18 weeks, and the wonder of creating a human life evaporated within her. She developed hyperemesis, which if you don't know is really bad morning sickness. She was constantly in pain. She developed gestational diabetes. And just all around hated the experience. Around this time Paul, the then fiancé, started getting sick of the complaining. I believe the argument was, your body is built to do this. It can't be that bad. Sarah was due around Valentine's Day, and Paul's parents, Mr. and MRS. Doe, were very excited. Both about the grandkid and the fact that he could be born on a holiday. She was very against that and really hoped that her son wouldn't be born on a holiday. Even one as small as Valentine's Day. Her birthday sometimes falls on Easter and she hates it because it might make him feel that his day isn't very much about him. Well, MRS. Doe says something like, well, if you name him Valentine or Valentino, then that'll make the day even more special to him. Again, sister hated the idea. She thought it was tacky. He'd be bullied for it. And just really didn't like the name Valentino. Paul loved it, but agreed to go with a more average name like Daniel or Jared. Fast forward to February and she was ready to get this over with. Sarah had officially been put on bed rest because while standing or walking her blood pressure took unexpected spikes and dips. I look back now and goodness do I feel bad for her. She was doing her best to avoid giving birth on Valentine's Day because, again, she didn't want him born on a holiday. Unfortunately, births happen when they happen, and that baby was going to come on Valentine's Day whether she wanted him to or not. I remember waiting out in the waiting room with my dad, brothers, and Paul, who couldn't stand to be in the delivery room because it was gross. I was so mad that he could have gone in but wouldn't because he thought my sister was gross while giving birth. Whereas I had to stay outside because I was too young to go in with my mom and other sister. Dad went home with the youngest 2 brothers while the oldest, Zeke, stayed to watch me because I refused to leave. 16 hours after Sarah went into labor, my little nephew was officially part of the family on the evening of Valentine's Day. Unfortunately, Sarah was not okay. She had to have an emergency cesarean section, and while doing the operation discovered that the back of her uterus facing her spinal cord had a very large and very severe, thankfully non-cancerous tumor. When I say large, I mean it was twice the size of a standard uterus. The doctors were shocked and didn't understand why nobody had noticed it on an ultrasound. It accounted for her severe back pain and blood pressure issues. The doctors immediately went in for more surgery to remove the tumor, but sadly ended up having to perform a full hysterectomy. This meant that my nephew would be Sarah's only child. Now while Sarah was in for surgery, Paul was taking care of everything baby related to make sure his son was okay. In my 14-year-old self's memory, I remember him being suitably distraught. But I didn't really pay him much mind and spent my time in the waiting room with my mother and other sister. Zeke, however, wanted to be a good future brother-in-law and make sure that Paul was okay. He found Paul filling out the baby paperwork on his own, looking in my brother's words like he had not a single worry in his mind. Zeke asked why Paul didn't wait for Sarah to fill out the paperwork, as she should have been put of surgery within the hour. And Paul said that he just wanted her to get your rest and heal. That checked out with Zeke, as he was 16 and didn't know any better at the time. Now I know what you're probably thinking. No, he wouldn't. He knows how much she hates that name. And still, she'd need to sign the paperwork too. My fellow peoples have read it. I regret to inform you that Paul forged Sarah's signature on the paperwork and waited until she was out of surgery to hand said paperwork over. My sweet nephew, who was born on Valentine's Day, was named Valentino on his first official birth certificate. I still to this day don't know why Paul and his family were so insistent about the name. He had even picked out a different one with my sister. And before you ask, No, he was never brought up on forgery charges because his parents were witnesses to her signing the papers, even though they only got there at the last minute. So Sarah dumped him and got her son's name changed a month later. She was willing to do split custody with him because that's her son's father and she wants the kid to know him. But Paul vanished and she never heard anything back, which seemed weirdly out of character to us. Until a mutual friend on Facebook was tagged in his wedding pictures 6 months later. Paul had apparently started cheating on her not long after she got pregnant. Sarah was livid, but there wasn't much she could do, so she filed for child support and continued to live her best life. Until 6 years later. This is where the revenge starts, my friends. So Sarah has been a single mother for the past 6 years and has been amazing at it. At this point in my career, I've been a hairdresser for about 8 months at our local Great Clips. I am working one day, and who is seated before me but Jane, Paul's wife, herself. I take her back for a trim and she clearly has no idea who I am. That adds up because a mutual friend that still keeps in contact with Paul said that Jane doesn't know a thing. She has no idea about Sarah, that she was the other woman, or that Paul actually has a kid that he's been infrequently paying child support for. She's in the dark on it all. I told myself not to be an ass and treat her like a normal customer, which I did. Now at this point, Jane was heavily pregnant, so a lot of our conversation was about that. She loved being pregnant, but it was hard. Her husband was so unsympathetic, big shocker. And she was due in 10 weeks and they still hadn't picked out a name for their baby girl. Ladies and gentle peoples, this was my chance. I asked what kind of name she was looking for and she said, I want something unique and unusual, but not ridiculous like Brainly. You know the ones I am talking about, and Paul had suggested so many already and she didn't like any of them. So I, conniving little weasel I am, said, what about Sarah? My sister's name isn't actually Sarah. She was named after an older family member that passed not long after she was born. But there was no female equivalent for his name, so our parents created one. It's a beautiful name and just what Jane was looking for. She loved it. She stuck by it. And I found out by stalking her Facebook months later that she had put her foot down about it, and that was their daughter's name. Now Paul has a daughter with his ex's name to remind him every day about her and to also remind them to pay his child support. Little nephew is 10 years old now with a new name and no contact with his biological father. Though we do still sometimes call him Val as a family nickname. He likes it but doesn't want to bring it to school, so it's staying a family nickname. Sarah pretends to hate when we call him that, in a joking way. As long as he likes it, she doesn't have a problem with it. And she's seeing a new guy who's really great and like a father to Val. Summary: my sister's baby daddy forged her signature on paperwork while she was in surgery to name their son a name that she had been avidly against from the beginning. Then broke all contact when she dumped him and married the girl he was cheating on her with while she was pregnant. 6 years later, I meet his wife and convince her to name her daughter my sister's name because the wife has no idea my sister and her son exist. Second story. Tifu by telling my aunt her BF cheated. This happened a couple days ago, and all I wish was I'd done it sooner. The story starts at my parents' wedding, cracking night, etc. But the following morning I comfort my sister crying. She ends up telling me my aunt's BF slept with our god sister at the wedding night. My immediate response is, well, gotta tell her. It's what I'd want if it was me. I go talk about it with my parents who know. And Dad says it's not his business, he's a very to himself type of guy. Don't want to get involved, but I plead with my mother, saying it's her sister. It should come from her. She tells me not to, and if I do I'll disown you and never talk to you in my life. We then found out she was pregnant with his kid. Another nail in telling her coffin. So I keep my mouth shut. This is my first hiccup, as I myself am very unconcerned about what others think. As long as I believe Tali, I am doing the right thing. I vent about it to my so and explain what my mum said, etc. She understand but still think I should find a way to tell my aunt without it being pinned on me. I thought about it to many a night. Cutting to the chase. 7-8 months go by and still no one has said a thing. He cheat prances around like he owns the place. And my godsister believes she's got away with it. We had a small family barbecue to celebrate birthdays, well within the social distancing rules in the UK, all going fine until I overhear Cheat saying something on the phone. Yeah, I'll see you later. Stop calling me until I call you on phone with GS. Something in me snapped and I asked if my aunt wanted to go shop with me. As we were walking, she could tell something was wrong. She kept pressing me to say. I told her it would ruin her life. So I did. I told her, knowing how she would react, knowing it'll be me to get the blame for any fallout and me taking the brunt of hatred from everyone. But I did. And do believe it was the right thing to do. And the fallout was crazy. She confronted him. He came at me, throwing me against a car, smashing a vase on my leg, 3 stitches, first time ever, threatening my family. My mom not talking to me. Just hell let loose. Fear of what my aunt would do if left alone. As much as I regret not saying anything sooner, I am glad I did tell her. Because how much long would it have been before anyone did? This is my first post here. Probably won't be my last. Thank you. Too long didn't he read? Told my aunt her BF was cheating on her after months of knowing. Hell broke. Needed stitches. Edit. Firstly, god sister is the term we used for her to describe her. It's because she's my godmother's daughter. That's just the shortcut to it. Not a cult or such. Apologies for confusion. It adds to the insult towards my aunt, as she was basically like a sister to me. And a niece to her too. Secondly, I am Molly 5 feet 8 while this guy was near on 7 feet and built like a brick shithouse. Not going to take a fight I know I'll lose, especially with cameras on me. Thirdly, in terms of legal actions, I know I have some evidence injury. CCTV footage off of the neighbors etc, but my first thought is making sure my aunt and cousins are okay. Fourth, my aunt has since had the baby. I wasn't too sure how far along she was when I was told she was pregnant. Believe end of first trimester. To all saying it doesn't belong her etc. I hear you. But at the time of writing, I felt as if I had ducked up. With the treatment I got, capital I, felt this was the appropriate place for it. I'll get back with an update on this thread when I know what's what. Thank you all for your concerns, opinions and the awards. Even though some of your thoughts go against my actions, I still respect you for voicing them. Love to all. Hit like if you enjoyed this video. Consider subscribing to our channel.